So, pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. Why is there a pyramid on the back of the American dollar bill? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Why would there be a pyramid? There are no pyramids in America, okay? Maybe there is, someone built a small one. You know, there's a pyramid in Las Vegas and stuff. But I mean a real pyramid like in Egypt. Okay, we have pyramids in Egypt, but we have a pyramid on the back of the American dollar bill. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they put it there? And then there's an eye in a triangle floating above the pyramid. Have you ever stopped to think about what that means? Why that would be put there? Have you ever just thought, a lot of people, they just look and say, huh, that's weird. And then they never even study to figure out something that they probably touch almost every day. They passes through their hands and they give to other people for years and years and years of their life. And they never actually sit down and understand, why the heck is this on the money? Okay. Well, let's look at it. Okay. What does the pyramid and the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill mean? Well, first of all, what does Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum mean? Okay, so you got this Latin phrase on the back there. Let's look at the picture here. Go over here. All right, so we got this dollar bill. And over here on the left, we have the seal. And at the top it says Annuit. My Latin pronunciation may not be perfect, but it's Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum. Okay? And it basically means announcing the birth, creation, or arrival of a new secular order, a new world order. Okay? Secular is it's a synonym for the word world. Order, novus is new. Okay? New world order. Okay, so we even got that phrase, New World Order, on the back of the dollar bill, on a seal, with a pyramid and an eye above it, which is called the all-seeing eye, or the eye of Horus, okay? And then we're not going to talk about that other seal today, but if you'll notice, the number 13 pops up a lot. There's 13 bricks, 13 layers of bricks going up to the top, okay? It's 13. And you're going to see that number come up later in the studies. All right, so anyways, so that's the back of the dollar bill. Now, let's get back to the explanation. All right, so what does Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum mean? Well, proof the dollar seal is Masonic. What does that mean? Masonic, as in the Freemasons, okay? If you haven't heard about what the Freemasons are, I'll explain to you after in a second. But first, I want to prove that there's a Masonic connection to the seal on the back of the dollar bill. It was put there by Freemasons, okay? So let's look at the history of it. In 1934, Secretary of Agriculture, soon to be Vice President in 1940 to 44, and 32nd degree Freemason Henry Wallace. Okay, so we're talking about Henry Wallace. In 1934, submitted a proposal to the president to mint a coin depicting the seal's obverse and reverse. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, also a 32nd degree Freemason, liked the idea, but opted to instead place it on the dollar bill. According to Henry Wallace, in a letter dated February 6, 1951, quote, the Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum impressed me as meaning the New Deal of the ages. Okay, and what he meant by the New Deal is he was just using a term that FDR used. He talked about the New Deal and the plan that he had, which basically was socialism. FDR is one of the worst traitors in American history. The stuff that he passed is absolutely horrible. The Emergency War Powers Act. If that's upsetting to you guys, sorry, but it's truth. Also, he had foreknowledge. He had knowledge. He knew that we were going to be attacked in Pearl Harbor. Okay, and he let it happen. Okay, that is documented fact in history. And many other things we could say about him. But anyways, he was a Freemason. Henry Wallace is a Freemason, and they got together and to put the seal on the back. And here's the quote from Henry Wallace. He said this, Roosevelt, as he looked at the colored reproduction of the seal, was first struck with the representation of the all-seeing eye, a Masonic representation of the great architect of the universe. Okay, so this Freemason here, Henry Wallace, is saying that Roosevelt liked the seal because the all-seeing eye represented the Masonic, the God that the Freemasons worship. Who is that God? They call him the great architect of the universe. Okay, so it's whatever God it is, it's the God that the Freemasons worship. Okay? The all-seeing eye represents that. Next, he was impressed with the idea that the foundation for the new order of the ages had been laid in 1776. Okay? Founding of the I'm sorry, I skipped that. I'm not reading the parentheses right now. The foundation for the new order of the ages had been laid in 1776, but would be completed only under the eye of the great architect. Okay, so 1776, a lot of people see that because if you look, let's go back to the dollar bill. If you go to the dollar bill, if you add up these Roman numerals on the bottom, it adds up to 1776. So why is that significant? Well, people say, well, that was when, the Declaration of Independence was signed. That was the founding of our country, right? There is another very famous event during that year. May 1st, 1776 was the founding of the Bavarian Illuminati. Okay, you might have heard that word too. You might have heard a lot about that word Illuminati, and you associate it with crazy, wide-eyed, nut job conspiracy theories. Okay, where people show people shape-shifting into reptilians, and Jay-Z throwing up hand signs and music videos and all kinds of other stuff. Okay, but I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, well, kind of am, but I don't believe in shape-shifting reptilians. All right, but if you didn't know, there was a real group called the Bavarian Illuminati, founded by a man named Adam Weishaupt, okay? And he was a professor of canon law at a Jesuit university called Ingolstadt University, okay? He was a Jesuit. And we're not going to go too deep into that rabbit hole, but just to give you a little background, a lot of people who study conspiracy stuff say, well, that was the beginning of the Illuminati, 1776 and blah, blah, blah. But listen, 1773, the Vatican suppressed the Jesuit order, which was around since the 1500s. They suppressed them. And then in 1776, this Jesuit pops up with this Order of the Illuminati, which was just doing the same things the Jesuits have been doing for ages, infiltrating and subverting and overthrowing governments of the world. Just doing the same thing. So what it seems to be from the evidence was that the Bavarian Illuminati was just a front group for the Jesuit order. Okay, but that's neither here nor there. That's another topic for another day. But anyways, the 1776, May 1st, was the founding of that Bavarian Illuminati. And yes, they were supposed to be a group of people. They were a group of people who were involved in getting powerful people together to overthrow governments of the world and stuff like that. Now, just interesting that they put 1776 there. But, all right, so, and then Henry Wallace finishes by saying, Roosevelt, like myself, was a 32nd degree Mason. He suggested that the seal be put on the dollar bill rather than the coin. Okay, so Henry Wallace presented it to FDR, and FDR wanted it. So here's the point. Freemasons got together, designed the seal for the dollar bill, and then approved of it and put it on the dollar bill. Totally by Freemasons, okay? And you might say, so what? Who cares? What does that mean to me? I'm glad you asked, because now we're going to explain why that's important. Okay? Because then we have to explain, well, what is Freemasonry? All right? We're going to get into that. Because if we have all these guys saying New World Order, famous people, then we have the phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum on the back of the dollar bill, which was put there by Freemasons. Then maybe if we study the Freemasons, it sounds like the Freemasons have an idea as to what this whole New World Order thing is. So the logical progression would be, let's go and see what the Freemasons actually believe. Who are they? Where do they come from? What do they believe? And then we can figure out what this whole New World Order is. Okay? We'll get into more depth in like their deeper history later in the show, but right now I'll just give you a quick rundown. Freemasons, if you don't know, are a secret society. They're called a fraternity. Their official explanation is, no, we're not a religion. We are a system of morality veiled in allegory and symbolism. Okay, basically they say that they have, their motto is making good men better, and that when you enter into this Masonic lodge and you become initiated, that you progress through degrees. There's in the Scottish Rite, there's 33 degrees that you can progress through, and each degree has certain secret handshakes and passwords and tokens and stuff like that you learn, and you learn secrets of that degree. And once you learn that, and then you prove yourself, you can move on to the next degree and the next degree, and you try to work your way up to the 33rd degree, the highest one, okay, in that type of Freemasonry. So, okay, so that's what they do. But, and they say they're not a religion, but they worship a god. They said the great architect of the universe. And that, you ever seen the square and the compass that they have? It's on the front of their Masonic lodge, and it has a G in the middle. So I've heard many different interpretations of explanations as to what that G stands for. There's always an exoteric and an esoteric. The exoteric is what you tell to the masses that you don't want them to when you don't want them to know the esoteric explanation. So they say, oh, it stands for God and stands for great architect of the universe, or some garbage explanation like that. But other explanations that I've heard from those who are know more about Freemasonry would be that it stands for Gnosis, the generative principle, Giza, the pyramid over in Egypt. Another one I've heard is that has to do with the Jesuits, that there is the mother church for the Jesuits in Italy is called Gesu, Gesu. Okay, it stands for that. So I don't know. There's a bunch of different explanations for that. But anyways, basically, they are a secret society. Most of the people who join the Freemasons, they don't know of anything bad about it. Most of them join it, and it's like it's just a fraternity for them. It's just like a bunch of mostly older guys that get together and they socialize, they do boring rituals and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. They go home and that's all there is to it. But as you go higher up and you learn more secrets and you learn more secrets, once you get up to the 30, 31, 32, 33rd degree, then you start to learn some crazier stuff. And once you prove yourself, and that's when we get into the deeper stuff, the more occultic stuff. So that's basically what Freemasons are. All right? Now, many famous people throughout history have been Freemasons, including United States presidents, founding fathers of this country, including Benjamin Franklin. He was a Freemason, all right? The occult, the mystery schools, the Masons, all trace its own history back to the Tower of Babel. They claim Nimrod was the greatest man to ever live, and the Masons claim that he was the greatest Mason to ever live after the flood. Okay, so we're going to talk about Nimrod after that. But first, before the flood, the Masons associate Tubal-cain with the origins of the original Mason. He invented metalworking, blacksmithing, etc. He was the 7th generation descended down from Adam via Cain. All right, so I'm just going to read that real quick. Verse 22. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal-cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal-cain was Naamah. All right, so there's Tubal-cain, and he was an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron, making things out of brass and iron. A blacksmith, metalworking, okay, which could mean tools, weapons, musical instruments, many different things, okay? But the Freemasons claim Tubal-cain was a Mason. All right, let's read what the Masons, and like I said, I call this show in their own words. Let's read what the Freemasons say in their own words about Tubal-cain. Tubal-cain. He was the inventor, this is a quote from Albert Mackey, famous, well-known, well-respected Freemason, and a Masonic historian. Albert Mackey, from his book Lexicon of Freemasonry, page 361, says this about Tubal-cain. He was the inventor of edge tools and introduced many arts into society which tended towards its improvement in civilization. Tubal-cain is the Vulcan of the pagans. Okay, so hold that thought. Okay, that he said Tubal-cain is Vulcan. So after this, we're going to look at who Vulcan is. But Tubal-cain is the Vulcan of the pagans and is thought to have been closely connected with ancient Freemasonry. So we got right there, the Freemasons admit that Tubal-cain is closely connected with ancient Freemasonry. Faber says that, quote, all the most remarkable ancient buildings of Greece, Egypt, and Asia Minor were ascribed to Cabirian or Cyclopean Masons, the descendants of Vulcan, Tubal-cain, the god Balkan, or Tubal-cain. Okay, so what does that mean? They're saying all the most remarkable buildings, ancient buildings of Greece and Egypt and Asia Minor were ascribed to descendants of Vulcan, Tubal-cain. Okay? The descendants of Tubal-cain supposedly built all the greatest buildings in the greatest civilizations in the world. This is what they're saying. Oliver says, in after times, Tubal-cain, under the name of Vulcan and his Cyclops, figured as workers in metals and inventors of the mysteries, and hence it is probable that he was the hierophant of a similar institution in his day, copied from the previous system of Seth, and applied to the improvement of schemes more adapted to the physical pursuits of the race to which he belonged. For these reasons, Tubal-cain has been consecrated among Masons as of the present day as an ancient brother. Okay, they call Tubal-cain an ancient brother. The Freemasons did. His introduction of the arts of civilization having given the first value to property. Tubal-cain has been considered among Masons as a symbol of worldly possessions. Albert Mackey, Lexicon of Freemasonry. There it is. Famous Freemason Albert Mackey says, Tubal-cain, ancient brother of the Freemasons. And then he also said, Tubal-cain is Vulcan. So who is Vulcan? Well, let's read. From the book Symbolism in Greek Mythology, Human Desire and Its Transformations by P.D.L. Vulcan was a sun deity who is associated with fire, thunderbolts, and light. The festival in honor of him was called the Vulcania, in which human sacrifices were offered. Whoa, whoa, whoa now. Do you see where I'm going with this? I hope you do, because the evidence is all here. Tubal-cain is Vulcan, and Vulcan was worshipped with human sacrifice. Let's read more about Vulcan. According to Paul D.L., so that's who wrote the book, Paul D.L., he bears a family relationship to the Christian devil. Now they're associating with the devil. It is fascinating to know that he married Venus, another name for Lucifer, or the devil. D.L. also suggests that Vulcan, Icarus, and Prometheus are symbolic of the intellect in open rebellion against the spirit. Okay? So, Freemasons say Tubal-cain's their ancient brother. Tubal-cain is Vulcan. Vulcan is worshipped with human sacrifice and associated with the devil. Therefore, the Freemasons associate one of their most ancient Mason as a god to which was committed human sacrifice, the worship of which would involve human sacrifice. Think about that. Yeah, that's right. That's who the Freemasons worship. Let's continue here. In Masonry, Tubal-cain is the name of the password for the Master Mason, the third degree. Listen to what occultist and Mason Manly Palmer Hall has to say. In his own words, Manly P. Hall, and I already know the defense of this, by the way. They try to say, Lucifer, he's talking about Lucifer, but, you know, it means something good, and it means light bearer, so that's okay, and it doesn't really mean the devil, and blah, blah, blah. That's all a bunch of hogwash, and they're just trying to explain it away. Lucifer is the devil. He's clearly described as so in the Bible, in Ezekiel chapter 28, in Isaiah chapter 14. Okay? The context, it shows the devil. Historic Christian teaching shows that. They all said Lucifer, he's the devil. Don't try to twist it, Freemason. That's who it is. All right? They say he is one of the greatest historians, a great respected authority on Freemasonry. Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason. He wrote in his book, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, chapter 4, said this: when the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mastery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. He must follow in the footsteps of his forefather, Tubal-cain, who with the mighty strength of the war god hammered his sword into a plowshare. First of all, he talks about Lucifer in association with Freemasonry, but beyond that, he's associating Lucifer and Tubal-cain in the same paragraph, okay? Not good for Tubal-cain, but Freemasons are associating, they're talking about the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. What is this? Why are Freemasons talking about this? He says he must follow in the footsteps of his forefather Tubal-cain, who will, with mighty the strength of the war god, hammered his sword into a plowshare. Do you know, we could do a whole nother show on this. Go look up, if you've never seen this, the Denver International Airport. Go look up the murals in the Denver International Airport. There's all kinds of really creepy, weird artwork in the Denver International Airport, which they might have covered up some of it now, but you can see pictures of it. And it's all depicting stuff about the New World Order. And in that painting, it shows an oppressive regime with swords looking like Nazis and stuff. And then there's like this Antichrist figure, all the cultures of the world coming together, and an Antichrist figure, and he's hammering the swords into plowshares. That's the symbol for the United Nations. That's the symbol for the one world government, the New World Order, is hammering the swords into plowshares. It's symbolizing an era of peace, but it's an era of false peace. Because the Bible says, when they shall say peace, peace, then sudden destruction will come upon them. It's going to be a false peace of a golden age, all right? So that's a whole other thing. But just wanted to say that sword into plowshare thing. And then, here's the next thing about Tubal-cain. We're almost done about Tubal-cain. We're going to move on to Nimrod in 1 second, okay? There is also a sexual connotation associated with Vulcan and Tubal-cain. For Masons who wish to conceal their membership from non-Masons but still advertise it to their lodge brothers, there is a special pin or tie tack they can wear. It looks like an upside-down golf club with two balls near the top. Many people assume the person is a golfing enthusiast, but it is actually a visual Masonic pun. This is called the Tubal-cain and is a pun on the secret password of a master Mason. Tubal-cain. It's a pun on the word Tubal-cain. Tubal-cain. It is an all too obvious pun on the god of Masonry, lowercase g. The male reproductive organ. It's a phallic symbol. Masons are involved in sex worship and sun worship. This is the same pagan worship that has been around for thousands of years back in Egypt and Babylon, okay? Let me show you this symbol. There it is. Okay? This symbol right here is the Tubal-cain symbol, okay? Two balls and a cane. You figure it out. You know what they're representing there, all right? That's that symbol. There you go. There's the Tubal-cain thing. It's all involved in this pagan Egyptian sex and sun worship. Goes back to Egypt and Babylon, but they say Tubal-cain is their ancient brother, okay? And he's Vulcan. Worship with human sacrifice. All right, now let's continue on here. Nimrod, founder of mystery religions and Babel. All right, so after the flood, we got Nimrod. And here's a quote from Albert Mackey again, 33rd degree Masonry, Freemason, from his book, The History of Freemasonry, Volume 1, page 63. This is what Albert Mackey said about Nimrod in their own words of the Freemasons. Okay? Not a conspiracy theory, people. Listen, pay attention. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is fact. Conspiracy fact. Here's the quote. The universal sentiment of the Masons of the present day is to confer upon Solomon, king of Israel, the honor of being their first grand master. But the legend of the craft, by the way, they call Freemasonry the craft, capital C. Okay, Nimrod. The legend of the craft had long before, though there was a tradition of the temple extant, bestowed, at least by implication, that title upon Nimrod, the king of Babylonia and Assyria. Okay? It says that the sentiment of the Masons, they said it's to confer upon Solomon the honor of being their first Grand Master. But Albert Mackey says no. He says the legend of the craft says that long before, Nimrod was the first Grand Master of Freemasonry. It had attributed the first organization of a fraternity of craftsmen to him. The first organization of a fraternity of craftsmen to him, to Nimrod. In saying that he gave a charge to the workmen whom he sent to assist the king of Nineveh in building his cities. Okay? So he put together this fraternity of craftsmen. That is to say, he framed for them a constitution, and in the words of the legend, quote, "This was the first time that ever Masons had any charge of his science. It was the first time that the craft were organized into a fraternity, working under a constitution or body of laws. And as Nimrod was the autocratic maker of these laws, it results as a necessary consequence that their first legislator, legislating with dictatorial and unrestricted sovereign power, was also their first Grand Master." Wow. Wow. They just admitted it. Albert Mackey just admitted it. He said Nimrod is the first Grand Master of Freemasonry. I didn't say it. I didn't come up with some wacky theory because I'm some crazy, wacky, fundamentalist Christian preacher just making up crazy theories. He said it himself. Nimrod's the first Grand Master. The one who was over the Tower of Babel, in charge of that construction. The one who was a mighty fighter, a hunter before the Lord. Involved in this. What did God do to that? The building that he was in charge of the construction of, he stopped it. So God doesn't approve of Nimrod. Okay? If you are a Christian, a professing Christian, and a Freemason, you can't be. Okay? You cannot be a Freemason and a Christian. And this is one of the reasons. There's many reasons, but this is one reason. Okay? You have some of the most well-respected Masonic historians saying that Nimrod was the first Grand Master of Freemasonry, and God stopped the building of his tower, Nimrod's tower, the Tower of Babel, as rebellion against God. And you want to be part of an organization that recognizes Nimrod as its first Grand Master, and before him Tubal-cain? Absolutely not biblical whatsoever, and is not pleasing to God. Okay? Cannot be a Christian and a Freemason. And neither can you be a politician holding office without being a traitor either. According to the encyclopedia, so that was from the History of Freemasonry, Volume 1, page 63, Albert Mackey. According to the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, the legend of the craft in the old constitutions refers to Nimrod as one of the founders of Masonry. Okay, here's the last proof of this. Quote, "Thus in the York manuscript from 1600 AD we read, At ye making of ye Tower of Babel, there was a masonry, first much esteemed of, and the king of Babylon, it called Nimrod, was a mason himself, and loved well masons." Okay, however, he does not figure in the current rituals. They've taken Nimrod out of the current rituals. I wonder why. He probably is in the current rituals. He's just, the higher up you get, he's more secret. But they don't want to openly admit it anymore. They openly admitted it before. Now they're trying to hide it. Okay? As far back as 1600 AD, they were saying, yeah, Nimrod was a mason. He was the first mason, the king of Babylon. There it is, okay? Okay, now after this, we're going to get into more about Nimrod and who he was, that he was deified as a god and stuff like that. But before we get into that, just a little fact about Freemasonry, all right? They take an oath they swear oaths in every degree that they're in, but they swear oaths to help out fellow, they call them brothers, right? Fellow brethren of the craft and fellow Masons if they get into trouble. And let's say, for instance, there's a judge who's a Freemason, and the defendant in a court case is a Freemason. And the defendant can do the Masonic call of distress. He puts his hands up and he does his little funky chicken wing thing, right? And then the judge recognizes that, and as soon as he knows he's a Mason, he's obligated to help him. He's obligated to get him off the hook, except in supposedly cases of murder and treason. Everything else, you're supposed to help him get off the hook if he asks for your help. But then if you continue to study, it gets really corrupt, and murder and treason, who cares? They throw that out the window too. The bottom line is their oath, their Freemasonic oath, supersedes the oath that they swear on the United States Constitution. Supersedes it. So what do you have? Complete corruption. That's why you have tons of... Why? You know why I know there's so much corruption in this country? Because there's people, there's Freemasons that are lawyers, judges, politicians, high-level business, media, military, all over the place, Freemasons. And they're all patting each other on the back, doing backroom favors for each other. There's Freemasons that are Democrats and Republicans, and behind closed doors, they're all on the same side. Okay? It's all a show. It's an illusion of democracy. The two-party system is a farce. You need to wake up. It's false. It's an illusion. The wool's been pulled over your eyes. It's a big game. This world is a theater, and all these people are puppets on a stage being pulled by the master of the puppets on their strings, okay, on his strings. That's all it is. It's just an illusion, and you're fooled by it. Now, we could go on and on and on about Freemasonry, but the point here is, what did we start off by looking at? The New World Order, they're all talking about this. The New World Order is talking about that on the back of the dollar bill. There's Egyptian pyramid there. There's all-seeing eye. It was put there by Freemasons. These Freemasons are connected to Egypt. They said that it goes back to Nimrod and Tubal-cain. Tubal-cain is Vulcan being worshipped with human sacrifice. Egypt is filled with witchcraft. You see what I'm saying here? These are who the Freemasons descend from. These are the ones who want the New World Order. Are you starting to see it? Those are the ones that want the New World Order. Okay? The ones who say they descend from Nimrod and Tubal-cain.